Kenya in East Africa, located on the equator, covered with vast stretches of green, fertile land. Over half of the population living in Kenya's capital, Nairobi, lives in poor housing or slums like this. Survival is a daily challenge. Wide stretches of the country are situated in the highlands, where it is sunny and warm, with plenty of rainfall. But the people who live here are often very poor. Many decide to flee the rural areas and their farms. They move to the cities dreaming of a better life. Many end up in the slums. Poor farmers become poor slum dwellers. The goal of Dr. Auma Obama and her foundation, Sauti Kuu, is trying to put a stop to this process. Sauti Kuu means powerful voices in Kiswahili. Auma Obama is trying to help young people realize their powerful voices. Her pilot project is with a group of young people in Alego. With years of experience in development, Dr. Obama is convinced that given a chance, young people are capable of actively improving their lives. Here in this traditional homestead lives 19-year-old Kennedy with his brother and father. Their life is simple with little material comfort. Sauti Kuu works on a bespoke action plan for Kennedy, the first step of which is confidence building.
Historically, many of our rural youth don't have very high self-esteem. We therefore have to help them build up their confidence and self-appreciation. We show them that they are important and that they can achieve a great deal just using their own potential.
With this newfound confidence, Kennedy is given a patch of family land. The patch has lain fallow because the family does not know how to exploit the full economic potential of the land. This is where Sauti Kuu comes in partnership with Rehau, a German company that has sent its specialist in development cooperation. Together with a local agricultural expert, they assess the situation. A small brook flows through the field. It would be possible to create a fish pond here that would boost the family's diet and income through fish farming. The project picks up the family where it currently is. Sauti Kuu's partner Rehau gathers experience and valuable contacts. Kennedy will grow vegetables that are on demand in the region. He will sell them at the local markets. With a profit, he can help support and maintain his family, while also creating opportunities for himself to improve his future prospects.
I'm not bothered to go maybe to the town, but I'm still here to build my home, to make it a real home, to make my place a good place.
Sauti Kuu wants to help young people improve their lives, wants to help them use their own potential, strength, and local resources to escape poverty and create a better future for themselves and their families. A power that motivates, that creates realistic alternatives, and nurtures and supports real potential. As an employee of the company Rehau, I would like to encourage other German and European companies to come on board with this project. The concept is very focused and targeted, and it's the best that I've seen so far in the development cooperation arena. Sauti Kuu is a global foundation that is reaching out to children and young people worldwide to help them actively participate in improving their lives and our future. Join us. Talk to us.
Good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me. And after the film, I guess I have to explain why Rehau thinks we are the best, so that I hope I can do that justice. It always makes me a bit nervous when I hear that part and then have to get up and talk. So thank you for inviting me, for allowing me to be here as you open your conference for the next few days. I hope it'll be, and I think it'll be very successful. For me, I have to actually say that it's always a shock again and again when I see my family name up on the screen in such a big way, and that there's actually going to be a section, an area of study that is dedicated to studying. I was hoping just my brother, but I think I saw a paper that's about me, which made me even more nervous. So, so I guess it's the Obama family. But I remember when it all started, we were told that we were warned that we would be part of it. So I guess this is what it means, and it takes a while, but I'm getting used to it. But I'm honored. I want to, on the behalf of the family, thank you all for making our family a subject of interest, a subject of transatlantic, transcultural, intercultural interest to enable people to discuss multiculturalism, interculturalism, and just how people manage to be with each other and live with each other across the cultures, which I think is a way towards improving our world, considering all the different terrible things that are going on at present, or at least that we hear about in the press as going on at present. So once again, thank you on behalf of the family. I'm going to talk about my organization, which is called, as you've already been told, Sauti Kuu, which means powerful voices. And it's called Powerful Voices because even I personally, as a young person, spent a good part of my childhood and my youth fighting to have a voice. I grew up in a patriarchal family among boys, very strong-willed boys, and I, as a single girl, constantly heard, as a girl, you can't do this, or as a girl, you have to let your brother do that, or as a girl, you have to do this, or you must do this, or that, or the other. And I always fought against this idea that I was going to be forced to do something because of just the fact that I had been born a girl. And I wanted to know why, and I was told you don't really ask questions. Culturally, we tend to have to listen to what we're told and do as we're told and not argue about it. And I would constantly question. And this questioning caused problems because really, as a young person, you were supposed to be meek and quiet and not really have a voice. Everybody else spoke for you. And that really disturbed me. So thinking back and my own fight in trying to get a voice and the path that I took made me who I am. And I do have a very strong voice, I believe. And you do have to tell me when I have to stop talking because I have a tendency, I can go on for 2 hours, especially when I talk about my work. So, and that's what we try to give young people in my foundation. And one of the key drivers of our work is what I called my talk, the title of my talk, and this directed towards young people is, You Are Your Future. It sounds, first of all, when you say young people are the future, people say, oh, that's a cliche, everybody uses that expression. But I strongly believe in it, that young people are the future. So when I tell young people, you are our future, you are your future, I also then add quite quietly, you are also my future. Because at the point when I am too old and too weak to make decisions and have no position anymore because I'm now an old age pensioner, you will be the one in the seat of power making the decisions. And I want those decisions to be in my favor. So if I treat you right now, right, you might treat me okay when I get to that age. So that's also how I talk to grown-ups about how they're supposed to view young people and how it's so important, not just a necessity, but actually an obligation and a responsibility to make sure that young people develop in a way that we would like them to later on be when they take over from us, because we have to pass on the baton, whether we like it or not. So you are your future. How do we do that at Sauti Kuu, and what is it that motivates us? One of the things that, and it's also me personally, because a lot of the work I do has to do with me as a person as well. I don't do it because I think out of some technical reason or some academic reason it's the right thing to do. It really is what I feel and what I believe is the way one should live their lives. So one can argue about it and have the conversation with me. I'm quite open for the conversation, but I warn you, I've been doing this for years, so I have really good arguments as to why I believe this model we use actually really works. One of the things we are trying to do is redefine self, especially when you're talking about young people who are socially, financially, and culturally disadvantaged. Very often they have a very poor sense of self. Who are you? Are you important enough? Do you even see yourself? Do you even hear yourself? Do you think you're important enough to be heard? Do you think you're important enough to take a position on anything? And are you able to even take a position on anything? And do you believe that that position you take is of relevance to the greater community that you're in? It's very, very important for young people to know who they are. It doesn't matter where they come from, whether from Kenya, from England, or from Germany. And also to know that once you know yourself and you know your potential, your opportunities are unlimited. This is something we have to, when we're talking about young people, them knowing about themselves, you being your future, you must know that you have all these opportunities available to you. Saying this to a young person from the slums may at the first instance not look like it, because really these pictures are taken where it actually happens. The biggest dump in Nairobi, the kids and their families go there to look for bits and pieces, trinkets to sell so that they can eat. And telling that young person that they have unlimited opportunities seems in the first instance a little bit of a joke. So bear with me as I try to explain what we try to do. So first we try to make you redefine who you are, or at least become aware of who you are as an individual. Then the other thing we do is we try to redefine poverty. What is poverty? Poverty is actually relative, because very many times what one person thinks is poverty is not necessarily poverty, because they limit themselves as to what they consider valuable in their lives and in their surroundings. And the problem with the idea of poverty, especially with the disadvantaged, is that we who are less disadvantaged have given poverty a definition that they then tend to want to fit into so they can qualify for the support that those who are poor get. Now I'm talking more specifically of the developing countries and my part of the world where I come from, Kenya. We're dealing with a crisis where poverty becomes an asset because maybe somebody will notice me and my family, they'll put me on that program, and maybe we will make it. But that somebody is from outside of your life. That is external support that you cannot control. You cannot define what they're going to do. They tell you what you need to do with your life. So they define you by the fact that certain things are missing in your life that qualify as poverty. I don't want to put down poverty, but we have to redefine poverty to make sure that you understand that the fact that you don't have running water or electricity doesn't necessarily mean you're poor. You just live in a different environment, in a different world, a different culture. That definition needs to also be included. And on top of that, poverty, once defined, cannot be an excuse. You cannot say, I can't do this and this and that because I'm poor. I'm a victim. So somebody has to take care of it because I'm poor. That's another phenomenon that we have to deal with, that we try to fight against. So the other thing we try to do is redefine this idea of development aid. Those who have heard me speak, there's a paper on me, who know how I feel about the whole idea of development aid, I always ask the question, yes, development aid, but development to what or from what? How come when it comes to talking about the developing world, you talk about development without giving it a context? What can I start? What can I do with that word if it doesn't have a context? Development aid. Entwicklungshilfe. What can I, Entwicklung zu was? Von was? Sorry, I have to say that in German. Just what I said in English, but I'm saying it in German because I heard it a lot while I was in Germany and I worked to a lot towards having this course around that term. So we have to start redefining what we mean and being more concrete. Are we talking about economic development? Are we talking about social development, ecological development? What development are we talking about? Because once you know what development, then you can start doing something about it. But just to say, I'm coming to Kenya to do development aid, I always then ask, what are you going to do? Develop what from what to what? For me, it means nothing. You have to define it, because before you can define it, we cannot have that conversation for myself as the recipient. So we try to redefine what the word development aid is. So basically, based on all the three different terms I've mentioned, we're trying to change the mindset. Trying to change the mindset of the communities we work with so that the people realize they are not victims of their situations. They are in the situations they are as disadvantaged children and young people and their families. But they cannot be defined by those situations, and they can change those situations. They need to change their mindset around it, because no condition is permanent. You can always change it. And that is very, very important. A key part of our work is that. And the other reason why we say it is that because of all those situations that the disadvantaged get themselves into. When you talk about saying, oh, we're going to get development aid as something that comes externally steered by somebody from outside, it is not sustainable. It falls in the bracket of philanthropy, which is also good, and I keep getting kicked under the table and being told off when I start talking about philanthropy and charity, because they say, you know, we are a charity, we are non-profit, we do not make money, we are dependent on donations. And I say, yes, but. I'll explain the but. Because development in itself is not, development aid in itself is, as philanthropy, donations is not sustainable. Because if the kind of help you get based on that, which is wonderful help and we're gracious for it, is the help that somebody gives you coming from their passion. It's what the Germans call the Bauchgefühl, or even the guilt feeling. You know, I feel a need to help. This term help is very powerful, but also very damaging. So if I feel like helping and have an extra $20 or 20 euros, I will donate. Or even more, it can even be 2,000, 20,000, I will donate. But I'm doing it out of a sense that I am helping because I feel I need to help because these poor people, which is also a position that one can take and a way for us to get the money, but it's not sustainable. Because the day I decide that I'm not happy with what you're doing and how you're running your program and I leave it, if you are dependent on that money that I'm giving you and I stop, then your program dies. Or the day I decide I'm not interested in supporting kids who have AIDS and HIV, young people, now I want to support girls because that's the in thing to do, then you're left hanging. And what people then do, for those who know the development world, is they do a huge somersault and do all sorts of acrobatics to move from doing aid as their program to moving to focusing on girls so they can continue getting the money. So it's not sustainable. There's no plan to it. It's not development because you're not developing to anything. You're collecting what is this thing or this thing that is called development aid. So you're hopping. And that we try to stop in the work that we do because we say development has to be, in the context of the underprivileged, the disadvantaged, especially economically disadvantaged, has to be within the economic development. That's when you can actually do something about it. It has to be put into the mainstream. The kids we work with, they may come from disadvantaged backgrounds, but at the end of the day, what we want to do is we want to bring them from a point of being disadvantaged to a place where they become responsible young adults who are earning an income and are participating in the running of their communities, their regions, their nations, etc., in a responsible way with financial independence. And at the end of the day, all that is economics. So what we are saying is get out of the development aid space and get into the mainstream economic development space. When you do that, then you're going to have sustainability. Because what you're going to do, and this is what we really do with these young people, is we start teaching them that they are part of the economic value chain. Whatever they're doing is going to lead somewhere economically to improve their lot and the lot of their communities. They are part of the economic value chain. And part of what happens when you become part of the economic value chain, you must, whenever you participate in anything, ask yourself, what's in it for me? Because what other question does a person in economics ask himself? Any corporate, any nonprofit asks themselves, what's in it for me? What do I have of it? Where's my profit margin? And that's what we tell the young people. Even participating in Sauti Kuu, becoming part of Sauti Kuu, don't be a member because you think you're going to get freebies and handouts. Be a member because you know there's something in it for you. Because it doesn't work any other way. Because that's what life is about. That is mainstream. That is the reality. And you have to move away from development aid, which is undefined, an amoeba for me, to a space where you're actually defining the kind of interaction you're having with each other. And once you define this interaction, that's when it gets dynamic and you start moving. So what's in it for me is the question that's asked. And I am part of the economic value chain, which means I'm important. And this is where our work starts becoming more precise, because what we then do to enable young people to be able to ask the question, what's in it for me? We work with them to develop and help them grow their personalities and their character, and realize and recognize their potential. Because if you don't have the confidence to ask that question, you cannot participate. You must be able to believe in yourself in order to be able to take responsibility for yourself. Because then you're forced to be active. You're forced to participate. And the moment you're active, the moment you raise that voice and people hear it, you have to do something about it. I think there's an expression that says, cry wolf. Once you cry wolf, you've got to do something about it. And that's what Sauti Kuu is all about, making you use that voice. And once you use that voice, then we have the approach that we call eye to eye, on the same level. The approach where you have a conversation, and we have conversations with our young people. We work on them to force them to become aware of themselves and realize that they must participate in order to get anything happening for them if they're going to ask the question, what's in it for me? It is their responsibility to participate. It is their responsibility to change their lives, to make a difference in their own lives so that they do not use poverty as an excuse and they do not see themselves as victims. Because that's the mentality that we have in most cases with the disadvantaged, especially in our part of the world, where they feel that they're victims and the world owes them in order for their lives to get better. So this is very, very important in the work that we do. And when we talk about eye to eye, the eye to eye approach on the same level, part of that conversation is about understanding how to negotiate your space, especially when we're talking about the development world, because in that space, we started off many years ago saying, let's give these people fish. Then we said, no, let's teach them how to fish. What I always say is, don't give them fish, don't teach them how to fish, ask them whether they eat fish. That's when the conversation starts happening. And if you don't eat fish, say you don't eat fish. And when the person asking you has nothing but fish to offer, then he has to retreat and say, I cannot help here, because all I do is I trade in fish. So this is the conversation. I use it as an analogy, but this is the conversation that needs to happen. And it's a scary conversation because on our part, from our part of the world in particular, everybody thinks, oh, the West is great and we need to listen and they're the experts. And also, we're an NGO, so if we start making, conditions and asking for our right and wanting to have the conversation, they're going to withdraw, they're not going to give us their money. And then on the West side, let's face it, I worked for CARE. I was an insider. We get good salaries as expatriates. We get lovely homes, you get nice big cars. You can hop from one organization to the other, living a wonderful life, your kids' school fees are paid and everything. Are you going to give up on that? Are you going to say, I only have fish to sell, I'm going to go away and leave? You're going to look for another organization that's going to want the fish that you're giving them, right? So this is the situation. Come and let's be honest about it and change the dialogue that's going on, because it's a business at the end of the day. And I say this with little caution here. Hopefully nobody will quote me, probably they will, but it is. It's a business. That's keeping a whole system going. But if you really look back at the core of it, and it can be changed from within, just changing the attitude, the mindset, not just of the recipients, but also of those who give, to say that this is a dialogue that we're having between us around trying to improve the situation of the communities we come into, but we ask them, we have the conversation with them, in order to be able to change this very negative status quo and to get rid of the victim mentality and the dependency mentality. Let's create platforms, and that's what Sauti Kuu tries to do. Let's create platforms where we make it possible, and our focus is on children and youth, again, because they are our future. Let's create platforms where we enable the people we work with to use their potential to change their lives by themselves, with our support and assistance. And the only time we use the term help is when we have a conflict situation and we have catastrophes. Talk of the tsunami, talk of earthquakes, floods, talk of war. But every other form of development work together should be a partnership, a give and take, a conversation, negotiation, even at the highest instance. Because to be honest, a lot of the times we need international support to try and get our own governments to move and manage our systems in such a way that it's profitable and advantageous to the communities that we come from. So we need to change that mindset of the way we work. Part of the work with the young people themselves, now focusing directly on the young people and their personality development and character building work, it's very, very important that we make sure the young people participate in the conversation that is had. While we are creating the spaces, Sauti Kuu has created a youth center from where we started talking and working under a tree. If you go on our website, you'll see it. We now have a youth center where the young people can come, a safe space where they can participate in activities and have conversations among themselves about what they want to do and how they want to improve themselves and their communities. They have an opportunity to discover their voices because they are made to use their voices through different activities that they have, through sport as well, very good. Nobody is louder anywhere else than on a sports pitch, and they get to have that opportunity to use their voices, to appreciate themselves and be appreciated by others, which is very, very important, not just for young people, for all of us. And they also are obliged to initiate activities that make a difference in their community. But they initiate the activities. In fact, when I started the work with Sauti Kuu, I was registered in 2010, but I actually started the work in 2008. And it was very, very frustrating because it was just me under a tree with young people, very naive. I'd get my whole family in the rural area to cook for these young people 3-course meals, which they aren't even used to. And I'd be going all over the place looking for the vegetables and all the ingredients because the people have land, acres of it, like was shown in the film, but they don't use it. They don't produce the produce that they need to eat, let alone to sell. And I would be looking all over the place, filling the taxi with all this food and feeding them, and they would love it, and we'd have a great time. And then I would say, okay, now what are we going to do about your challenges and your issues? And there would be silence. And I'd be, okay, I can think of a lot of things because I'm that sort of a person. I'm extrovert, I'm loud, I'm everything. I can think of thousands of things that challenges you guys have. I see them already just here. But it's not for me to say, you all must say, because I'm going to stay and solve your problems. You guys have to solve them yourselves. We spent 2 years sitting looking at each other, drinking juice, eating biscuits, and having 3-course meals for lunch. And they ended up in the end saying to me, Auma, this is really difficult because the people in the community are laughing at us. They say, these are Auma's young people who sit and drink juice and talk. Because they expected to get freebies as well, which they didn't get. But I honored them because they stayed on with me. But in anticipation, okay, this time she's going to tell us what we're going to do. She's going to tell us. And I couldn't. I said, I can't because it's up to you all. And only later, once we started doing a lot more work around the personality development, when I realized that these young people don't use their voice, they don't believe they'll be heard, they don't have the courage to use their voice, only then did we start moving forward. And also when I retreated back and let them take the lead, because it's also very important for young people to be listened to be heard, to give them that space so that they can move things forward. And slowly but surely, we then managed to start getting the program going to where it is right now, where they really take a stand and take a position on things. So it was very, very important around getting them to realize who they were themselves is one, be seen, be heard, and become aware that your potential is going to make that different, and it's going to help you take action because nobody else is going to do it. And we really had the active situation that we were not doing anything for 2 years because I was waiting for them, and they didn't believe me. And that's one of their biggest challenges up to today. They tell me that was the hardest thing for them, was to finally take the lead and decide what's going to happen with their lives because they were used to being told what to do. So in a concrete way, the areas that we then move on with the young people in terms of helping them, we move on to, once they realize who they are, we look at what is their potential. Because we have another very important saying in Sauti Kuu, use what you have to get what you need. Because again, thinking of the so-called development aid, nobody ever really asked these people, okay, we're coming in, we're going to do some work with you, but what can you bring to the table? They're defined as poor, and everything that comes on the table, believe you me, is very very expensive, because sometimes it's imported. Because if the program has been set somewhere else and it comes as a package, you're importing whatever it is you need for the program, and it's costly because that's where our governments make a nice sum of money by charging you 100% customs and all the rest of it to get it into the country. And the question is, ask what is already there in the community. What are the local resources that people can use to get what they need, not what they want, what they need in order to improve their lives? That is one of our key questions at Sauti Kuu. And we work with the young people and their families in such a way that we look at what are the resources that they have. And they cannot come with nothing to the table because everybody has something to offer. Everybody, even if it's just a brain with a lot of great ideas, everybody has something to offer. So we support them in education. That's what they have to offer, their brain. So work hard, get good grades, and get an education so you can improve your life. We support them, especially in the rural area, in agriculture, because we have families, like I said earlier, that have 5 acres, 6 acres, 10 acres, and they're using 1 acre and trying to feed themselves. They don't have any food. They cannot. They import food. Like I said, me with the taxi with my cabbages and my vegetables for the lunches, everybody's doing it. Food is being imported into this area where they have land and they can grow food. So that's where we tell them, you have a resource, appreciate this resource and use it. The sad thing, though, is because we've been taught that a person is only successful if they have a white-collar job, and our school system works that way, that we send people to school with the anticipation that they'll get a white-collar job. Anybody who then doesn't get a white-collar job and ends up working in the countryside, working the land, feels they're a failure. So they feel, oh, they've not succeeded, they're a failure. So they do it very, very reluctantly. And with our colonial background, now speaking directly about the Kenya and the African countries that were colonized, it was the women who were left in the homesteads tilling the land. The men went to work on the big farms and the ranches, etc., or in the city. So to stay behind in the countryside now and work the land is not only a failure, but you're doing women's work, which you can imagine in that kind of a context and that culture is seen as something very negative. So it's very difficult to get people to work the land, and this is what is causing extra poverty. And changing the mindset and telling them, this land that you have is an asset, it's a resource. Use it to improve your lives. It doesn't mean you have to all become farmers. You have maybe 5 children, 1 might become the farmer, but the rest of you will profit. Maybe none of you will farm, but first get the land working for you, put a manager in place, and then go to the city. Because part of the problem of the slums and the poverty in the cities is that people go to the city unequipped. They have no funds, they have no knowledge, they have nowhere to stay. They end up doing nothing in the city or doing the work that we saw there. So using the resources that they have locally. And then also appreciating vocational skills, crafts, handicrafts, and different vocations that you can do that don't require you to go to university. Because again, our system says the only people who are successful are the ones who manage to get into university, and anybody who drops off. And it's really terrible, because as you drop off along the way, it's because you failed, basically. When you take this is the lovely golden path going towards university, professorship, whatever, big jobs, architect, doctor, whatever. And then on the side, you're falling off and becoming a plumber, electrician, a carpenter, and all these things. And everybody sees it as if you failed. You didn't get the grades to continue, which is a terrible way of looking at things, because the most expensive people to get to work for you are electricians, plumbers, masons. Don't they make the most money at the end of the day? And this is, especially in Europe, this is happening more and more. So this is what we're telling our young people. And believe you me, those people who have been masons, whatever, masseurs, they're doing those jobs, and then they still go to university and still get that degree because they can afford to pay their way through school. So this is the change of mindset that we're trying to create among the young people, and tell them, stop it. You need to know that you need to use the resources you have that are made available to you and start being realistic. And instead of going to get a white-collar job where you're sitting in a government office, bored stiff, looking for little things to do on the side to make extra money because the pay is so miserable, and you could actually have a skill that you can use to make more money and still improve your situation and still actually sit in the office and have the white collar, because if you do really well, you can employ people and become the boss. And then you don't have to dirty your hands. So, there are many ways to get there, and that's what we discuss with the young people, to try and get them to get away and shake off this sense that they don't have the resources, to enable their lives to be better, and they can do it right where they come from. In the countryside, in the case of the young people who work within the rural area. We don't just work with the kids in the rural area in Kenya. The idea of the model that we use is to try and work internationally. That was touched on a little bit. So we're also working with kids in Germany now. We've just started. We're doing a pilot in November. And again, the idea is around being responsible for your own life. You are your future. And also taking ownership of what happens in your life. What's in it for me? And as you ask what's in it for you, what are the resources that are available to you that you can use to improve your life? And don't blame other people. Don't be a victim, because there's no reason, there's no excuse for being a victim. There are other issues in the European context. I appreciate that. And sometimes it's even more difficult in the European context to help young people because the problems they have are less visible. It's not so material like in our part of the world where somebody doesn't have enough to eat, they don't have clothes, they don't have school fees. Very real, concrete, hard, normal problems that you can say, okay, if I find a sponsor for this person, their life improves dramatically, and it really is true. But in this part of the world where a lot of psychological problems, there are a lot of systems, a lot of red tape, very often the issues that young people have here are really inside. It's all happening inside, and you can't see it outwardly. And the worst part of it is they feel bad because they're always told you have it better. Who hasn't heard that saying, if you don't finish your food, you must finish because the kids in Africa are starving? Always wondered about that because the food can't get to the kids in Africa. But anyway, that's another, But the kids in Africa are starving. You have to eat your food. So this guilt feeling that you get, you must feel better. Es muss dir besser gehen. You have no choice but to be happy and to feel good because actually you have everything. And that's a difficult one. That's a hard one to live up to. And that problem, and also the problem is also made stronger by the fact that there isn't a generation gap. The young people, and I experience this a lot in England, young people and the grown-ups, there's a big gap between them because there's a loss of trust. With the many issues that young people have, they don't believe adults really have their interest at heart. And adults tend to feel young people are a bit of a bother. Sometimes they're scared of them. We had that situation. I was working with young people in England that you'd go down to the shops and there's like a group of 10 young people and you see an old lady walking and she sees them and then suddenly she crosses the road and walks from the other end because she's scared. And it's true. Young people will then joke about you or do whatever, but they're scared. There's some disconnect that's happened that you can't walk through and the kids say something and you turn around and say, hey, behave yourself. Society doesn't educate the young people anymore here. So it's a lot more difficult. But the core problem remains the same, that young people need to be heard. They need to have a voice, and they need to take responsibility for their lives, but we must create a platform for them. So the model that we use in Kenya to try and create a platform for young people to have a voice and use their potential, we do the same when we're trying to do the same in Europe as well, starting with Germany, to create a space where young people can realize their potential and also find back to the community, a joint community, where the adults are also involved, because there's a lot of mistrust going on. At our end, not so much, like I said earlier, because of the material needs. You meet those needs, you get a sponsor, it's usually an adult, the kids are happy, they trust you, they believe in you. Brings other problems, that's a conversation for another time. Yeah. So that's kind of what Sauti Kuu tries to do in a nutshell. We're trying to create spaces. We're trying to create a possibility for young people and their communities to be able to improve their lot in a dialogue situation where they get heard, they listen as well, and together solutions are found for the problems that they have. It's an exchange between the parties that are involved. Very, very important. And an exchange based on respect, based on the fact that it's trying to make a difference, to make the lives of those young people, their families better, because they're part of the value chain. They're the consumers, they're the employees, they're the employers, potentially. So all of that we take into account, and all of that we have a conversation around with the young people. And most importantly, at the end of the day, in the work that we do with the personality and character building, with the education program, and with finally what we try to do is make sure at the end of the day they become young people who financially are independent but are also responsible and are moving their communities forward. That's what we try to do. So just to finish off, I have a few words that I would like to share, and this is really for the young people. We could call them words of wisdom, and they're not all mine. I don't know who quoted them. I collect them along the way, but I think they're quite helpful, especially for young people, but I think also for adults. I tell them, don't worry about life. Live it and understand it later. Because sometimes we live holding our breath. It happens to me a lot, all the time, especially with my work with Sauti Kuu. When I get really stressed thinking things aren't going to work out, I hear, and sometimes literally people tell me, breathe. Because I hold my breath, I stop breathing. And in order to make something happen, make a difference, you need to do. You need to be active, you need to participate. Do. Do not do. Because at the end of the day, it's your responsibility, it's your life. You are your future. The other one, so long as you try, you can do nothing wrong. And I really like this one. So long as you try, you can do nothing wrong. Mistakes are not wrong. They're just detours to your destination. I'm sure you've all heard that one. It sounds so like a cliche, but it's so true. Because you're just trying. Nobody has a book. We parents can tell you. We make so many mistakes, and every now and then you wish there was a manual telling you how to do it right. But there's no manual. You just do. You try. And by doing, you learn through your mistake and your mistakes. Another thing that we do with Sauti Kuu young people, which is for me key and very, very important, is they should ask questions. Don't not know and keep quiet about it. As the saying goes, it's more important to ask questions than to get answers. There are many answers to one question, but the question is key. You must ask questions. If you don't understand, ask. And there's never a wrong question. And if the person doesn't answer your question, there's something wrong with that person, not with you. And probably it's because they don't have an answer, so they're embarrassed. And if they're older and in an authoritative position, then they're feeling a bit, vexed by it. This was my situation growing up as a Luo child in our traditional community. When you tell an adult something and they don't quite get it, then they tell you off. Come on, child, what's that nonsense? You shouldn't be asking such questions. Go do your work. But you just know they don't have an answer. They're quite trying to figure it out, So, but always ask. Don't let it go, ask. Because there is always an answer somewhere, but you need to ask the question to get the answer. Another one is, you do not need to become somebody. You already are. And this is for the young people in particular, because there's always a lot of insecurity about who am I. Your task is to find out who you are. So you're not trying to become somebody, you are already somebody. Spend time with yourself. Find out about yourself. Find out what you can do. Test yourself. But very, very importantly, don't pull yourself down. And part of what happens when you're pulling yourself down is this comparing yourself with others, which is very difficult not to do, When you think of, my mother used to always tell me, the kind of work you do, and bless her, she really is a loving person, you don't really make that much money. Your friends are doctors and whatever, and they're making so much money. Why are you doing this thing that you don't make so much money with? So at some point, I would feel a little bit insecure and think, yeah, maybe I've taken the wrong path because I could be earning a lot more money, but then it wouldn't make me happy. So if I compared myself with my friends who had bought 3 houses and have lovely kids who are really successful doing X, Y, Z, and me with my no houses, 1 kid, so I start thinking, oh God, I'm wanting. And actually, when you compare yourself, you always somehow find yourself wanting. So we try and tell young people, don't do that. Build yourself up. Pull yourself up. Yeah? And also, the other thing is fear. Don't be afraid. And that's a hard one because we all are afraid. We all fear something somewhere along the way. Don't be afraid. And in particular, don't be afraid to hear the answer no. No is just a word. And just hearing no doesn't mean you can't do what you want to do. How many famous people were told no? If you look at you can Google them all. The ones who were rejected, who wrote whatever letters, all heard no, and went out and said, I'm going to show you guys, I'll do it on my own. And now they're the big bosses who are employing the guys who told them no. So don't be afraid to hear no. Keep on going. If you believe in what you're doing, you will succeed. And like I said earlier, no condition is permanent. You can always change it. It's in your hands. You have the power to change it. So please, don't be afraid to change things, to move things forward for yourself. And then another one that's very, very, very important for me and for the young people I work with is the idea of plan A and plan B. Because all of us have a plan A, and this plan A often has been decided by our parents, by the church, by our community, by our school, and we follow it. Oh, my father wants me to be this and this and that. My father always wanted me to do maths, and I'm very bad at it. So I had a very hard time with him because he'd constantly be testing me for my maths in the hope that I would somehow excel and show him that I was actually good at it, and it never succeeded. But the pressure was always on, so it was very scary for me. And I wanted to do other things, but you also feel you have to oblige. But I always say to young people, there's always a plan B, which is your plan. And that plan, you also have to figure out how to getting it in place so that at some point you can actually follow that plan and do what you want to do. Because at the end of the day, if you do what you want to do and you do it well, 100% commitment, you will succeed. You will succeed. The only time you don't succeed is when you give up. And that's what we try and tell young people. You cannot give up. You must always, so long as you're alive and breathing. And that's what I tell myself as well. And I always joke with them and say I'm 29 forever. So, in other words, a young person as well, you will always manage to do something and make something of your life. But while doing all of that, and the most important thing, and that brings me back to what Sauti Kuu tries to do about saying you mustn't have the victim mentality and you must take your life into your own hands, is the world owes you nothing. And that could be the sad part or the great part. They owe you nothing. So when we go doing the blame game and saying my parents, my this, I did a talk the other day. It was around mental challenges and psychological issues that people have. One of the conversations we had was about the comparison between Africa and Europe. And what I was trying to explain was that in my culture, we don't look back. That is one of the differences. If I have issues now, it's very hard for me to think, oh, it's because my mom didn't do, and this is not putting it down, it's just being African, so bear with me. Because my mom didn't do this, or my mom beat me up, or I didn't get enough cuddles, or whatever, I can't even think of going there to explain why I'm miserable now. In the West, people look back and talk about that, which is good in itself and is a way to do the therapy around it. But the problem is you can't change the past. You can only change your present and your future. So having that situation where you think, oh, well, I'm in this situation because that and that happened before, and now they owe me, is going to put you in, you're in the bog, you're stuck. You can't move forward because that's not going to change. And the strategies developed to deal with the past, it's still up to you at the end of the day. But you have to look forward because your life is in your hands. You are your future. And I think for us older ones, I think it's the same as well. It's never too late. So what I've said and addressed mainly to the young people, I think it applies to all of us. It's never too late. We still can take our lives into our own hands and make sure that our future is how we want it to be and how we want to form it. And working in collaboration with each other across continents, across nationalities, across cultures, in order to improve this space that we live in that has a lot of challenges, especially now in the 21st century. Thank you very much for listening to me.